Welcome in, football fans, to another episode of Necessary Roughness on the Bite Size Sports Network. I'm your host, John Boyd, joined as always by Michael Phillips, Nick Winograd, and today we've got bandwagoner Chiefs fan. No, I'm just kidding. He's a real fan. We've got our Chiefs guy, Trevor Steinbacher, to join us and talk a little bit of AFC West. Gentlemen, how are we all doing? Let's go clockwise.
That's me.
I did counterclockwise, but yeah, go for it.
Okay. I'm doing all right. To add to what I was talking about last week, first week of flag football practice, I will call it interesting. It's been fun.
Fifth and sixth graders.
Fifth and sixth graders. It's intense, but also the least intense thing imaginable. So yeah, it's great.
I hear you. Trev, how you doing, my man? He's another damn fantasy podcast host, but he's coming over to the real world of football to chat us up.
Right.
How you doing, man?
Finally.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on here. As you mentioned, I do my shows on Wednesday nights with Dan, another damn fantasy podcast. I'll plug some other stuff later on, but I'm just happy to be on here to talk about the reigning NFL Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, we got that out early. I love it.
Had to.
Nick,
I took down my flag. I should have put my flag back up so you guys knew.
Yeah.
Why'd you take it down?
It doesn't actually fit well, so I had to.
It's interesting you're sporting the one guy that wasn't on the Super Bowl team last year, but interesting.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it's the only jersey. I got my Kelsey jersey on. I had to pull it out, but
good.
yeah, you're right.
All right. Well, let's jump right into it. As I mentioned at the top, we've got the AFC West. Not as much hype around the division in general as last offseason. A lot of people were saying 4 playoff teams. Some new looks to a few of them, but we'll get into that. We're going to start, just like we do all of these divisional shows, with our favorite free agent signing of the division as a whole. So all the 4 teams, who's your favorite signing? Michael, we'll start with you.
I know it's not one that's really been talked about unless you're a Chargers fan. At least from what I've seen on Twitter, I really do like Eric Kendricks going to the Chargers. Like, 1, he's out of the division. 2, exactly. 2, like, he's going back home. He's playing for his hometown. Is he from, he was raised in LA? I know he went to UCLA, but so yeah, he's going back home, gets to play for his hometown team, San Diego or whatever. But still, I just really think that he can add a lot over the middle, because even though he is a little older, I think that's kind of what the Chargers need right now. They have a lot of younger pieces on defense, not named Khalil Mack. So to have that trustworthy veteran over the middle, and he's going to play happy because he's happy to go back home. So he's not going to be frustrated with his deal, hopefully, unless he plays out of his mind and plays over his contract. But I think it's just going to be a good veteran addition to their locker room, and that's what they really needed.
Yeah. 2 years, 13 and a half, a little funny money on the back end, but hopefully he gets those 2 years out there and plays it out. I think there were a lot of knocks on him this past year on the Vikes. I think a lot of that was more reaction time than it was him losing a step due to age. And going over to the Chargers now, he's actually staying in a Fangio style defensive scheme. So it will be his second year in a similar scheme, which might help him kind of get back into the swing of things and get close to where he was prior to this year. So I like that one. Trevor, who you got?
Well, can I say Tommy Townsend brought back on a 1-year deal, the punter for the Chiefs? No,
Super Bowl champion punter.
Exactly, right. I sat with him at a luncheon before the season this past year. I was actually really lucky to be able to go there. Dude's just a cool ass dude. He just sat there, talked to us about him and his brother, and trying to play in the NFL. So that's pretty awesome. I'm a big fan of him. But my real signing would be Jawan Taylor, tackle coming over from Jacksonville, second round pick back in 2019. I think he's just, he's obviously going to be the guy who fills the void that Orlando Brown is leaving behind. And I think that he will do just as well, if not a little bit better. We talked a little pre-show about how Orlando Brown was really good run blocking tackle, which he really was. But I think the Chiefs hit him a little bit with some of the blocking schemes, with the pass protections, the chips, a lot of running back help, those kind of things. Not to say he's not a damn good tackle, but I think that he got paid a little bit more than what the Chiefs were willing to do and what he's worth. So bringing in Jawan Taylor as that kind of that second tier guy, I think will be perfect for this offensive line and keep a really young offensive line moving forward.
Yeah, maybe some quicker feet back there. Orlando Brown didn't quite reset the market like he was talking about, but still like 16 mil APY to go over to those jabronis in Cincinnati, as Travis Kelce would say. Nick, who you got out west?
You say Eric Kendricks, Jawan Taylor. These are good picks, but none of them are big Mike McGlinchey coming from San Francisco to Denver to help Russ a little bit. I think this was an awesome signing for Denver. Just shore up that O-line a little bit. Russ was definitely rushed a lot more than he was anticipating in his first year with Denver. Especially Pete Carroll had that unit strong every single season that Russ was there in Seattle. Until the end, but. Certainly, Nathaniel Hackett wasn't doing him any favors in that O-line. He was getting rushed off the edge a little too much. I think Mike McGlinchey, just a power right tackle. It's going to be a much different type of season for Russ, in my opinion, for Denver as well.
Yeah, I like that one. They hit the trenches pretty hard, and Russ kind of lost some of that escapability, it seems like, too. So I think you got to shore that up. They went with Ben Powers at guard, threw some money at him as well. So I think they're putting their money in the right place. I like that one. Mine's a little sneakier, and this is just kind of one of my personal favorite players. And he actually started in Houston, so that might be a little bit of the reason why he didn't follow D'Amico Ryans back over there. But mine's Charles Omenihu at Kansas City on 2 years, 20. Extremely versatile defensive lineman, 6'3", about 280. He can play really anywhere from a 2-eye out to a 5-tech. Can rush the B gap on the passing downs. Can really set the edge in the run game. And they might end up bringing back Frank Clark because I don't know where else he's going to go. But that does also fill a void on early downs for sure on the edge. Maybe opposite Karlaftis, and kicking inside on passing downs. I think he's going to be really effective in that defense for them. So that's mine. So we've got a couple of Chiefs. Pretty good mix.
So nobody likes Jimmy G.
I was hoping one of us would say Jimmy G just as a joke, but
yeah, I was almost going to say Jacoby Myers, but I feel like how is he really going to help if it's Jimmy G?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see what drags. Yeah, let's start with Kevin James. I mean, Sean Payton and the Broncos. They had an interesting off seasons. We touched on it a little bit. They invested heavily into the trenches. Mike McGlinchey, Ben Powers, also brought over Zach Allen from Arizona, another, kind of Swiss Army knife along the defensive line.
JJ Watt Jr.
Yeah.
All the people that have seen Hard Knocks,
he's got some tutelage. He's got some tutelage, so he could be a pretty effective piece for them. But their earliest pick, 67. So, there's the novelty of Sean Payton coming over. He's got another short quarterback to work with. So let's talk on a macro scale a little bit quick, and we'll go around the horn again here. Michael, how do you feel about the outlook of this team just kind of compared to last year. Last year was really high hopes, and the offense was abysmal. How hard do you think that course really corrects this season, or do you think it's a bit of a sunken ship?
I would say that it is a it's sinking a little. It's keeping its head
There's a
above.
breach in the hull.
Yeah, exactly. I do think obviously like you can't really deny Sean Payton, and his impact as a head coach, but you while acknowledging that, you also have to acknowledge the fact they're outside of Nathaniel Hackett's disaster class of being a head coach. There were moments where just Russell Wilson did not look like a football player anymore last year. Now there were some moments in a couple different games where he had like some Russell Wilson moments, but I think you can only do so much with a guy that's made it this far in his career being in one system. Like, I do think because they're stuck with Russ for a long time. I do think that if things aren't looking so hot by mid-season ish, I think Sean Payton might be kind of looking for some whispers about finding his own guy in the draft, even though they're stuck with Russ for a long time. The cap has gotten crazy in recent NFL. So, it gets more and more every year. If they can find a way to get rid of Russ at any point, or even just as a backup, if they find a new guy, I don't have that much faith in Russ is what it really boils down to. A lot of faith in Sean Payton, but not in Russ.
Yeah, even if it's at the end of this season that they try to cut Russ, $85 million in dead cap accelerates. And the out that's kind of written into the contract is after his age 37 season in 2026, at which point it's still a $31+ million cap hit, dead cap hit. If they do cut bait with Russ. So yeah, that's tough. But we'll see what he can come up with, I suppose. Let us know down in the comments below if you think Sean Payton really has the fairy dust they need over in Denver. Trev, I'll kick it to you. We've got their draft capital rolling on the bottom here.
Not much.
It's not much. And they've been floating over the course of the offseason, floating like a Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy trade rumors. Return on them might be a little higher than 67 if they're able to get a deal done. But I don't think you're fetching a Marquise Brown first. I don't think you're fetching a A.J. Brown first, of course, for either of those guys, especially with the injury concerns to both of them. But where do you see their kind of minds at from the front office coming into this draft? Do you feel like they need to get more capital?
I think that they're definitely going to be shopping one of those wide receivers. We talked about it on Another Damn Fantasy podcast last week, and Dan and I were both kind of in agreement. So it makes a lot more sense for them to move on from Jerry Jeudy, just knowing the contract situation and what they have with Cortland Sutton already. It does seem like Russ kind of connected with Cortland Sutton a little bit more last year. Occasionally Jeudy has his games, but overall it seemed like Sutton was the man. So I definitely think that they will be shopping one of them, and I do expect it to be Jerry Jeudy. I agree. I mean, I agree with you. He's definitely not A.J. Brown worthy and not Hollywood Brown. I wouldn't be surprised if it was somewhere in the 35 to 45 range, though, a pick in there to a team that maybe thinks that they're wide receiver away, but they don't like this wide receiver class, which I don't think is super deep. That's a conversation for another day, maybe Monday, right? But I think that I don't think it's super deep, and so I could see them trying to move Jerry Jeudy, utilize that to their advantage. I like what they've done this offseason so far with their offensive line. They've picked up 3 guys. Nick mentioned McGlinchey earlier. They also signed Ben Powers, a guard, and they picked up a Fuller, the center. I mean, he's not going to be game changing by any, but it's clear they're putting some stock into this offensive line to give Russell Wilson the chance to show us and potentially try to prove, exactly what Michael said wrong, right? Maybe he does still have it, but man, when you run for your life constantly, how do you get anything done? So I think that Denver going after this offensive line early is important, but they're still a long ways. I would put them above the Raiders right now, but I think they're a long ways from being, a division champion.
Yeah, and definitely they could get probably some decent value for a Judy if a team doesn't like the wide receiver. It's definitely not a real top-heavy wide receiver class, if anything. Yeah, and this offense, 16.9 points per game last season. Following that huge investment in Russ, everybody talking about those weapons, it was bad. And the defense,
how great the offense was going to be.
Yeah, exactly. And with Javonte Williams in and out a little bit, he's great when healthy. We'll see what else they do with that running back room, but I think the O-line at least is primed to have a good rushing offense. And hopefully buoy Russ's performance a little bit more. Nick, what would you say is this team's number one need just before we get to the season, whether that's something they are able to address in the draft via trade, one of those late off-season free agent signings? What would you say is the biggest need on this team?
I mean, as I said, I really like the McGlinchey move. I mean, that really helps a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think that after getting Chris Manhertz from the Jags, it's not tight end anymore. You still got some receivers that have a lot of talent, and they're probably going to trade one of them. And I would say that it's got to be either offensive line or try to draft one of these other speedy running wide receivers out of the draft. I think that they've done a really good job trying to lock up their offensive line. And the defense is solid. We knew all season long that why isn't this team a top contender? Well, it's obviously the offense, because the defense is strong. They had to trade Chubb because it was such a lost season that they were like, well, we're going to take something here from Miami because they're actually trying to make the playoffs and make a run while we're kind of out of it. So they had to trade Chubb, but the defense was still strong without him. I think that they're going to go defense more later rounds, but early. And obviously, they only have 67, 68. But I think, first of all, I think they're going to trade one of those picks. But I think that they're going to go with either offensive line or receiver with one of those picks, because you're going to try to get Russ somebody quick, speedy. He can make some moves, out of the backfield potentially, like a Pacheco, type of player for Kansas City. And then, if not that, try to continue to shore up that O-line to give Russ as much protection as he can have.
You could wait till the 7th round to get a guy like Pacheco if you're good enough to do it,
Yeah, that's true.
I think you're probably right. I think you get as much talent as you can on that offense, and you let Vance Joseph do what he can with the defense. You got to think Sean Payton's going to have, if he's not calling plays all the way, you got to think he's going to have a hand pretty deep in the offensive game plan. Offensive coordinator is Joe Lombardi, who was a pariah, frankly, in division rival LA Chargers last year. I think his game plan and the way he called that offense was a lot of what held Justin Herbert back, which we'll get to shortly. But yeah, this team is, I think, several pieces away from contending in the division, and certainly in the AFC, which is still a stacked conference. Especially at the quarterback position. So if they don't get Russ back to, well, at least a serviceable level, let alone back to cooking, it's gonna be a rough season again here. But hey, I still really like this defense. Pat Surtain's one of my favorite players. I think they'll still be all right there and keep their heads above water that way and stay in games. But, you're going to need more than 17 points a game if you want a winning record, or even kind of pushing a playoff spot in the AFC here. Let's get to the Raiders. they have a lot of draft capital, and they signed a lot of guys. I think what I might do is just kind of run off their. So they tagged Josh Jacobs, who might have been the best running back in football last year, most yards from scrimmage, and he kind of was finally realizing that potential everybody saw out of Alabama, really get into that upper echelon of running backs in the league. But here is just, I mean, I don't even think I'm going to name all of these guys. I think there's 20-something names. The big signings, Jimmy G, 3 years, 67.5. Jacoby Myers, 3 years, 33. Then Marcus Epps, Robert Spillane, Brandon Faison, Amir Abdullah, Brandon Parker, Jesper Horsted was re-signed. Sure. Jakob Johnson, fullback, Nation. O.J. Howard, Keelan Cole, still in the NFL. Jaquan Johnson, Austin Hooper, Alex Bars, Cam Sims, Philip Dorsett, Jordan Willis. Hronis Grasu, Duke Shelley, who is awesome, but very small. John Jenkins, David Long, Brian Hoyer, Jermaine Illuminor, Curtis Bolton. They were busy in the offseason. But yes, that was all of the names, all the signings. So not a ton of blockbusters. And obviously the loss of Derek Carr, or the swap for Jimmy Garoppolo, whatever you want to call it. They also lost Mac Hollins, who played a really big role last year, weirdly. Lost Darren Waller in a trade to the Giants. So it's a team that we don't really – it's a directionless team right now, really. We've got their draft capital rolling on the bottom. We'll see if they make a quarterback move at 7. But, barring that, what is this team trying to do? Where are they headed? Michael, what are your kind of initial thoughts on the Raiders coming into this season? Do you feel like they have any chance of staying afloat? Do you think this is a team that's really going to bottom out? Or do you think they're sneaky competitive?
Well, I do want to add, I have a little note, which is why I started laughing when you said Keelan Cole. When you said favorite free agency signings, I had Eric Hendricks, and then below it, I had Keelan Cole, and then parentheses, LOL. He had a catch. When I was on an airplane a couple years ago, I was watching a game on the ESPN on there or whatever, and he had a catch when he was on the Jets that he always just has one really good catch randomly in the middle of the season. So I love Keelan Cole. But yeah. As for the Raiders, I don't think they're going to be competitive. As much as I hate to see Devontae Adams leave Green Bay to just be on a bottom tier team, even though it's his favorite team from child, I don't care. He's just going to lose games. It's going to suck to see that. While it's also going to be they're just in a division with Patrick Mahomes, and I know Trevor loves to hear that, but you can't realistically, unless you're taking a quarterback this year, and admitting that you are fully rebuilding. Because there's some Raiders fans on Twitter that are convinced that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to go out there and be the best running back or quarterback in Raiders history. So unless you take a QB high, and if Anthony Richardson's a Raider, I'm going to throw up in my mouth. But unless you take one high and admit you're fully rebuilding, you're kind of just asking to be the bottom of the division and not accepting it. And I don't think there's any chance that they can fight for the top of the division. It's going to be between Kansas City and Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think it's Caleb Williams' watch if Jimmy G is the unquestioned day one starter.
Yeah,
and I mean, if they do take a rookie this year, you got to feel for Jimmy G. I mean, just always with the young and pushing him.
Yeah, with the contract they gave him, though, I don't think that's we're taking a QB high. At least they might take a guy like a Clayton Tune or something late, but yeah, I think with the contract they gave Jimmy G and how much they've been hyping him up on social media, and everything, I don't think they're taking a QB at 7.
And they let Jarrett Stidham walk. Unbelievable.
To a
yeah.
division rival too.
To a
Yeah.
division rival, that's right.
Give them the playbook.
We've got Lee talking a little silver and black. Tight end, slot receiver, quarterback, number 3 wide receiver. Yeah, man. Jacoby, Renfro, they're almost all slot receivers. I mean, Devontae obviously is an X, but he operates out of the slot a ton.
A ton.
There might not be enough, snaps in the slot to go around. And frankly, that's Jimmy G. If he's going to be good, it's going to be over the middle. So that's a little
the Patriot way.
It's a really good tight end class. So I could see them going tight end with their second round pick potentially, because you are going to want to stretch the seams when you got Jimmy G. You're not going to see many good Devontae go balls, unfortunately, up the boundary with Jimmy G. But we'll see there, and yeah, tight end for sure. And I like how he said QB as well. It's funny. But yeah, we'll see how they attack that draft.
I mean, they do, but yeah.
Trevor, the Raiders scare you this year? How you feeling?
No,
Look at
not at all. God. One thing that's been on my mind since you guys have been talking Raiders, you listed all of those guys that they signed. Maybe 5 of those guys are going to be paid more than $1 million per year.
Yeah.
And 80% of those guys are on 1-year deals. The way I am looking at the Raiders here, yes, they're bringing in Jimmy G on a 3-year deal. They've got Adams. They bring in Myers, right, on a 3-year deal. Mm-hmm. They tag Jacobs. I think they're going to go into the season with the idea of like, oh, we could win with our offense. We got Jimmy G. He's going to be great. Jimmy G has been a good quarterback, but the 49ers were freaking stacked around him. When they met the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, that defense was elite, and the Raiders have nothing near what the 49ers had around Jimmy Garoppolo. So, no, I don't think so. I think it is truly – I don't think they take a quarterback this year. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said the Caleb Williams watch. I would not be surprised to see this team hovering around the 2 or 3 win, 4 win on the year, and draft Caleb Williams potentially number 1 overall next year. And maybe there'll be a surprise guy like I don't know, kind of like Joe Burrow was, right? He kind of jumped up a little bit towards the end with the college career, but maybe there'll be somebody else. But I assume it's the Caleb Williams watch for the Raiders. I don't expect them to be in a lot of games this year. I think that offensively, I'm a fantasy football guy. I'll be excited to have some Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams, and there'll be certain games that I'll really love to fire those guys up in DFS because of bad defenses and whatnot. But overall, there's just not enough talent around this team to actually compete week in and week out, and I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, it's tough. Nick, give us some hope here. What do you feel like is a best case scenario for this Raiders draft? Do you think they're looking at that Cardinals 3 pick? Do you think a guy like Levis falls to 7 and they pull the trigger there and maybe get the wheels turning? Or do you see a viable path through this draft, a Seahawks draft, a Jets draft from 2022 that could really kind of lift them into quasi contention? Because they do have a lot of capital, 8 day 3 picks, 4 top 100 picks that they could really nail. But what do you feel like is best case scenario? Or are you all the way out?
You're saying all this stuff about like hopefully they get Will Levis, hopefully they can make a move, But I feel like the best possible case scenario for the Las Vegas Raiders is to mess on every single pick and go 0-17 and try to rebuild from there. Because the thing about the Las Vegas Raiders is they always give their fans a little bit of hope, and then it all just kind of crumbles. And somebody gets arrested, and then all of a sudden the team is just in shambles. And I think that if they win 7 to 8 games this year with, a decent offense and a kind of depleted defense and Josh McDaniels that, gets some things going and then they don't make the playoffs and they get a bad draft pick next season. It's just not worth it. Jimmy G's been, as Trev said, like he's been proven to be like a very, solid, he's a great backup, solid starting quarterback in this league. He's been to a Super Bowl. And they got Devontae and Hunter Renfrow and now Jacoby Myers. Lee was saying like they need a wide receiver 3. I mean, they have 3 really good guys. So I think that obviously I'm kidding with like they should miss on every. They don't want to do well this season because if they do and they miss because the other 2 teams are too good in the division, that's just not the best thing that they need for their franchise moving forward. And obviously they're not going to move forward with Jimmy G as the starter forever. So this is a bridge type quarterback. This is a bridge type situation for this franchise. They want to try to get somebody like Caleb Williams to really rebuild and look forward towards the future after this year. This needs to be a lost year for the Raiders, and it seems to never be. It seems like they're always stirring, and I hope that for their franchise and for this team that finally just they kind of just go out and understand the assignment on this one. As for the actual draft, I think they have a lot of needs on defense. They have a lot of guys that had potential like Abrams in the past and guys like that, but they haven't really worked out, and I think they need to provide the team with some decent capital here on defense with some good corners. Look everywhere on defense because the offense is actually pretty good.
Yeah, the tank is on. This is not a job Brian Flores would want. Yeah, exactly.
Nick, you mentioned about I know you were kind of joking about the miss all of them. This is actually the perfect season for them to start a rebuild. And then they go out and get Jimmy G. And it's like, I just don't understand. Why did you tag Josh Jacobs? Why did you go out and get Jimmy G? It was all right in front of you. You've got how many? 12 draft picks coming up? Like, just utilize your 12 draft picks, sign a bunch of guys to 1-year deals, put a bad product out on the field for a year. We're not, I know obviously it's the NFL. You don't want teams tanking or whatnot.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, I really like what Houston's doing this offseason. After having a couple of down years, you could easily do something like that. When the Colts got Andrew Luck, it changed their entire franchise around. I don't know if Caleb Williams is a franchise changer, but he's definitely got more hope than Jimmy Garoppolo does. And you just went out and signed him for 3 years, $72 million. It's just things like that is going to keep them in just exactly where you're saying, right? Like they're going to have hope, but they're never actually going to get over the hill. They're going to end up with a 7 to 15 draft pick again, right back in the middle of there's no quarterbacks left. Now you're taking another defensive back.
Yeah. And Derek Carr was a real floor raiser, and then they're finally like, all right, we're done with Derek Carr. Jarrett Stidham's going in to start. And then they cut them both loose. And they get another floor raiser in Jimmy Garoppolo, who's gonna, he's gonna complete passes over the middle. He's gonna hit the dig route. He's gonna get the ball out quickly, but he's not gonna hit the go ball up the seam in Super Bowl 52 to get you there. No. He's it's an interesting half in half out kind of thing, like you mentioned, Trevor. Like this is the year where it's like, yeah, go all in on the draft picks. Maybe tag Jacobs and give yourself a window to extend him. He might have a few more prime years in him. He was a really young rookie. But yeah, it seems like this is the year to just say, all right, screw it. We're done with Derek Carr. The era's over. Let's start a rookie. Let's start a 3rd round rookie, see what happens, and see if we can get one of the guys in 2024. Drake May, Caleb Williams, whoever their guy is. But yeah, that's
because
go ahead.
Nobody putting pressure on the Raiders this year. Like teams feel pressure, and then they want to go out and do something like that. Nobody thinks that they should be good this year. The Chiefs and the Chargers are obviously going to lead the division. Denver finally got a solid head coach, and they're going to try seriously this season. Nobody thinks that the Raiders need to go out and win this division or do anything in the playoffs. So it's like, why would you even do that and make that move to sign a veteran quarterback when it's just going to kind of, while it might get you a few more wins, it's going to, deteriorate you, over the long haul. I just don't understand it.
Yeah. Me neither. Something I'm starting to understand a little bit more is the direction of the Chargers. Now, again, I love getting rid of Joe Lombardi. I prefaced that. He just was, and frankly, there was a lot of heat coming to Brandon Staley towards the end of the year last year. There was talk of him being scapegoated for their underwhelming performance last year, and obviously a ton of injuries, especially early on in the year. Rashawn Slater, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams for a stint. I mean, Herbert was hitting DeAndre Carter and Jalen Guyton and whoever he could find out there.
Some guy that's now in the XFL. I can't think of his name, but
I couldn't. That's who I was trying to think of too. So there was definitely the dearth of available weapons for a lot of last season, and on the offensive line, it was pretty tough. But when it comes to the outlook for this season, I think it's looking up. For the Chargers, I want to start with you, Trevor, because I think this is the actual competition in the division. This is the team where I think, I might not scoff at you if this was your AFC West pick, to actually challenge Kansas City. Their head-to-head games are always a blast ever since Herbert got into the league. And in one way or another, I think it's going to be competitive down the stretch with the Chargers. So how do you feel? Both of your teams, the Chargers and the Chiefs, were pretty quiet this offseason so far. So it's sort of a run it back scenario, and obviously the Chiefs had the edge last year. But with another year of development for Herbert, a new offensive play caller, how do you feel about the Chargers as competition for the reigning champs?
The best part that the Chargers have going for them is they are not going to have to play the Bills, the Bengals, the Eagles, the Jaguars. They're not playing the number one schedule, right? They get the number two schedule, whatever. It's still a tough schedule, but they're not going to have that number one schedule that the Chiefs had. However, the Chiefs have had that number one schedule for the past 7 years, and it's just not really stopping them. The Chargers won't win the division until they can start beating the Chiefs and beating them consistently. I truly, yes, you're right. The games have been great. Justin Herbert brings a whole new element to that rivalry. I love it. They always seem intense, but he can't get over the hump and he can't finish those games. And the Chargers can't finish seasons. They've shown year after year that the closer it gets to the end of the year, the more losses they start to take on. And then they end up as a 5 or 6 seed. I don't remember what 5 seed, I guess, because they lost to the Jags, right? They would have been the 4 seed. So they end up as a 5 seed, the wild card, and losing the first round of the playoffs. It's like it feels like if I was a Chargers fan, I would just be like waiting until, okay, when's it going to happen this year? And that's how it felt to be a Chiefs fan years ago. I love Alex Smith, but when he was the quarterback, it was just kind of like, well, we made the playoffs. We're not going to go anywhere from here. This is our reality. That's kind of what it feels like right now with the Chargers. You mentioned it, Chiefs and Chargers. Neither team really made huge splashes in the free agency this year. Who do you trust more at drafts, right? The Chargers or the Chiefs? I'm going to take the Chiefs right now. They're hot with their draft picks. Brett Veach is very, very good. Finding guys like Pacheco, Jalen Watson, these guys late in the drafts, like, I don't see that coming up from the Chargers. What I see when I look at the Chargers is a running back who is ticked off and doesn't want to be there anymore. And even if he does play, doesn't sound like he wants to play for the Chargers. He's just going to play for himself and bet on himself. And you got 2 wide receivers, one who's aging and one who can't stay healthy because he doesn't know how to tone down his game enough to be a healthy NFL receiver. He just wants to go up and grab the spectacular grabs, and then he falls hard and he can't stay healthy. Like, that whole team environment, you don't see that with the Chargers like you see that with the Chiefs right now. The talent's there. The talent is there. It's the ability to win ball games when it matters that we haven't seen from the Chargers. So no, I'm not really worried about them in this moment about taking over the Chiefs just because they can't prove that they can win when it matters.
Yeah, AFC Vikings. I feel for them. There's a lot of parallels when you watch a Chargers game.
They're good. Both teams are good. Yeah,
they're good, man. Yeah, and the Chargers Vikings was electric when they played. They were just both trying to lose so hard. And they'll play this year as well. So that'll be an interesting one. Nick, I'll kick it to you. When you look at the Chargers this year, we've got Kellen Moore coming over to call the offense, coming over from Dallas. Young, hot rod OC and former quarterback. So we'll see how he does with Herbert. I think at the very least he's a guy who will keep the gas on, keep his foot on the gas, I should say. I don't think you're blowing 27-0 if he's calling the shots. He's a little bit more pass happy, a little bit more new school, a little bit more pass to set up the pass. And he does, work the horizontal passing game, but there was so much and I watched the all-22 of that playoff game. Once they got the lead, you were just like, Lombardi, what the hell are you doing, dude? Eckler's good. You just need like a couple of first downs. Pound the rock. We don't need play action 7-step drops on 3rd and 8 on the potentially game sealing drive. So I think that'll make a bit of a difference. But how much of a step forward do you expect from Herbert and the offense as a whole, especially if they get something like a Jalen Hyatt or something in the draft, like a field stretcher to go along with the big contested catch winner in Mike Williams, the route technician in Keenan Allen. If they're able to round out the weapons, do you think Herbert's poised to take that step to really contend with Mahomes in this division this year?
Yeah, we've talked about Kellen coming over for a few weeks on this podcast. He's been a popular acquisition throughout the league, and especially as we've talked about him. Lombardi was doing Herbert no favors. Herbert, he could do things with a depleted roster that like nobody else could. Like you'd all of a sudden see guys like I've never heard of, like Joshua Palmer and like the other guys, Jalen Guyton, I think that's his name. Yeah, these guys are like in the end zone. I'm like, dude, what? Like I thought they had other guys. Where are they? My dad's like, hey, they're injured. I'm like, of course they are. Yeah. And it's like they're always injured, and it's like Justin Herbert does these things with these players that like you just know. Obviously Brady was able to do that a lot, but and Mahomes does it as well. But for such a young quarterback, it's very impressive. And I think that Kellen Moore will do wonders for him. Another quarterback that played in the league not even that long ago. He's going to come in. They're going to have a really good relationship. And as you said, if they can get somebody like a Hyatt, like they're going to be able to round out this receiving core the way that, Kellen Moore and Justin Herbert won. I think Justin Herbert's going to have a lot more flexibility within this offense as he's growing older, and they realize how much of a superstar he can be, whatever. Ultimately, he's going to have a lot more flexibility, and they're going to trust him more and more. 27-0 leads in the playoffs won't be broken anymore won't be blown anymore because Herbert's going to have more of a. I think that in past years with him taking orders, he's like, okay, I'll do that, and then he does it incredibly. But sometimes he doesn't have that overseeing power that so many of these quarterbacks nowadays have. Where it's like, Mahomes, Patrick, do we want this guy in the draft? And Pat's like, yeah, it sounds good. Or nah, I don't think he'll fit in. I don't think Herbert's had that. And now I think they're going to kind of give him more of the, they're going to give him the key a little bit more. And I think it's going to help them out a lot. Do I think that they're going to compete with the Chiefs? Yes. Do I think they're going to beat the Chiefs? No.
Yeah, that's, it's easy to say they'll compete, but it's tough to say they'll beat them. I'm with you there. I think something that'll make a big difference as well is if they get a healthy year out of Rashawn Slater.
Yeah.
And Corey Linsley at center. It'll be year 2 of Zion Johnson at guard, who I really liked coming out. Year 2 is kind of when guards figure it out historically. So that could be interesting. Jamari Salyer might kick back into guard. He played a lot of tackle last year. Trey Pipkins is back, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see, and they might go O-line. Who knows? Michael, we kind of saw Brandon Staley start to figure it out on the back end of the year with his defensive play calling, really starting to mix it up a little bit more, starting to play aggressive, and in a way that really started to unlock guys like Asante Samuel Jr., let him just really keep quarterback eyes in those zone drops, let Derwin James kind of run wild, and started to get a little bit more manufactured pressure off the edges when they were really lacking it on the interior. When you look at this defense coming in, do you think they'll have enough, both from like a play calling creativity standpoint and a talent standpoint, to measure up and stay consistent with how good we expect the offense to be? Do you think this will really be like a well-rounded team this year? And what are your expectations there?
I think it'll be better than some people expect. I think with having Kellen Moore brought in on the offensive side, it'll be a first year within Los Angeles for him. But I think if there's a lot of trust there will be a lot more time spent on focusing on that defense to figure out who can do what best. And I think that's kind of what he was starting to figure out last year. Asante Samuel, like you said, he is a quarterback's worst nightmare when it comes to being able to like read where the ball is going. He's not designed to be, this just in a box kind of corner. Like he plays the position naturally very, very well. It's in his blood, literally. But for Brandon Staley to actually figure out, we have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. Like we should be able to have this insane edge pressure on the defensive side. And Derwin James has always been great. Like he body slammed that guy that Trevor has on his shirt. So I think, there are some additions that need to be made defensively. Like I wouldn't be shocked if they took a defensive back at 21. Maybe they trade up to get a guy if they see somebody that they really, really want. Just because I think you need somebody alongside, some younger, immediate impact guy alongside Derwin James and Asante Samuel Jr. But I think it'll be better than most expect.
Yeah, and it's a team too. They've got, we talked about Asante Samuel, J.C. Jackson probably back healthy this year. Kind of a signing that a lot of people forgot about. It was a huge, huge pickup initially when he came over from New England, and then unfortunately got injured. In his stead, Michael Davis did an amazing job at cornerback. A lot of times he was playing man-to-man on number one receivers. When they got any type of 3-by-1 looks or any, one receiver to one side isolated, he was always sticking that guy in man-to-man. They ran a lot of Meg coverages, man everywhere he goes, with him, and then did their zone on the back end where they were able to keep Davis in man and then Asante Samuel with zone eyes, which worked really well for them. Asante Samuel got his hands on a lot of balls. And Michael Davis did a great job in man-to-man coverage. So when you get J.C. Jackson back and you've got another man-to-man corner who can really stick and who has excellent ball skills as well, a ton of picks over in New England. I think all of a sudden this secondary is really going to be a problem for a lot of teams. We know what Derwin James can do on the back end. But when you have that cornerback trio healthy, I think that could really open up what Staley's able to do on the defensive side. And if they draft somebody who can give you some interior push, Sebastian Joseph Day is good, but he's kind of just good. He's not a real pocket pusher. If they get somebody who can really generate some pressure from the inside, obviously that edge duo is nasty. Suddenly you're starting to see a really strong defense at all three levels. And we talked about Kendricks at the top of the show. If he's able to come back into his own a little bit, if Kenneth Murray takes that step forward under his tutelage, like, this it all hinges on the health, obviously. But Staley's got a deep bag, and now he's kind of got the talent to reflect that. So on both sides, I think I'm actually more. Well, I was pretty optimistic last year, but I think I'm a little bit more optimistic coming into this year. Barring any other major health concerns, like if as injury riddled as they were last year was anomalous. There's no way they're that banged up again. I mean, there is a way, I guess. We saw the Ravens have a couple bad years in a row, but if they're even just a little bit healthier, I think they're going to be a much bigger issue for some AFC teams, and maybe get a playoff win, maybe make a little bit more noise. Real quick, let's do a speed round on who we think they're taking at 21. Throw out some names, throw out some fits. Who you got, Michael? We'll go clockwise again here. Oh, you're muted.
Can we come back to me?
Yeah, we'll come back. We'll go counterclockwise.
Okay.
Nick, who you got?
I was on mute too. All right, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. I don't know how his name. Say his first name. Kalijock Hansey, D tackle out of Pittsburgh. So I'm gonna go with 21. I'm hoping for them that he's still there. If he is, then I would take him.
I like it. Some interior push for sure. Maybe the most polished interior pass rusher in the draft. Trevor, throw some names out. Who you got?
First, I was really waiting on you to come out and say that you thought they were going to take down the division. You were on a hot streak. You were going all in. I'm like, man, is he going to reveal it? I think they really need to get more depth at the wide receiver position. Knowing Keenan Allen is aging, knowing Mike Williams has never stayed on the field in his career for a full season, I think they got to go wide receiver. Probably, obviously just best available at that position at that time. Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. I believe, I don't remember the kid's name. You named a cat earlier, wide receiver as well.
Hyatt.
Jalen Hyatt, maybe in the second round, come around at 54 if he's still around there. But yeah, I think at 21, they should probably take one of these mid-range wide receivers and try to build some depth there.
Yeah, I love Zay Flowers. That's one of my bigger draft crushes.
Yeah, but he's a Buffalo Bill, so they can't take him. So
I don't know if Zay or Jordan Addison will be there, but yeah, that's why I'm like one of the top guys that's there.
Yeah, allegedly Zay Flowers has been learning the offense with Bill O'Brien in the Pats pick at 14. But Bill O'Brien was one of the coaches at the Senior Bowl as well. So maybe they just made buddies, who knows? But I love Zay Flowers. Jalen Hyatt would really fit that field stretcher role. You can kick Keenan Allen into the slot, and have Mike Williams where you can throw back shoulder on one side of the field and throw Jalen Hyatt front shoulder where he can beat somebody. And that kind of feels like the Jalen Guyton role where you probably have a little bit more dynamism from Hyatt and a more well-rounded receiver. Guyton can burn, and you saw some deep balls to him. But I also think, and I have no idea how these wide receivers are going to fall, I think Quentin Johnston could be a decent fit as well, just because of what he's able to do after the catch. They kind of drop where the ball lands. Keenan and Mike Williams for the most part. Mike Williams, like you mentioned, is jumping for everything and falling for everything, and Keelan Allen doesn't have a ton of juice after the catch. Yeah, exactly. But Quentin Johnson is really, really dynamic after the catch. Big frame. He's got like some Anquan Bolden to him where, after the catch, like he can shimmy and shake a little bit, but guys also just bounce off his thighs. Like he's really rock solid. There are some questions about how natural of a catcher of the ball he is, which is a concerning knock on a receiver coming out and projected first round. But I like a lot of these top receivers for them, and that's obviously what we focused on. But I think value-wise, when you weigh that against need, I think that's probably the way to go. Michael, do you have any other takes on there? Or are you kind of in the receiver camp as well?
No. So I had to find my my Chargers picks here. So initially last night when I was looking into Chargers needs, I was looking at safety, but I don't think there's going to be someone at 21. I think the top safeties will probably go a little before then. So again, I've seen this man mocked as high as like 13 to 16, but Brian Breesy, defensive tackle out of Clemson. I think, they really got to get interior defensive linemen going over in Los Angeles because, like you said, Sebastian Joseph Day is good, and that is it. So, he's not the biggest concern that I've seen a lot of people talk about with Breesy is that he's got some injury concerns. With tearing his ACL a couple of years ago, and he had shoulder surgery, I think last year. So I think if he can stay healthy, that's a really good fit for Los Angeles. And if he doesn't, then it makes sense because it's Los Angeles.
Yeah, yeah, I like the Breezy pick, and he might fall. He had really, really good tape at Clemson when Venables was still calling the defense there. And then actually before the 2022 season, he tragically lost his sister to brain cancer. And his tape wasn't quite as good as in 2022. And, when you're coming from a real analytical standpoint, that might not be something that a scout weighs too heavily. But I think you've kind of got to. So when you're scouting him as an NFL team, I think you've got to think he'll kind of get back to his 2020, 2021 self, getting onto an NFL team, just the the gravity of that taking place, and then going out and playing. I think it has happened late summer, so just like right before the season, and when that's something that's on your mind, like it's tough to go out and play at your best. I gotta think, right? So that's also something that contributes to his 2022 tape, and the tape alone is why he's fallen down some boards. I mean, he was a projected top 10 pick coming into this season. So if he does fall that far, I think that would be great value for the Chargers. He's definitely got some juice as a pass rusher. Now, the main event. We've got the reigning pick 31. They didn't win the Super Bowl. 31. It's the Super Bowl winner. Trevor, we're going to start with you. Let's just talk. Let's zoom out a little bit. They just won the Super Bowl. This is a team that can coast through the regular season sometimes. And it's a roster that kind of just waiting for the playoffs to get there, right? But with these 8 day 3 picks, day 3 is also a day they've been very successful in recent years. Do you expect another solid draft class? What kind of players do you expect them to target early? And looking at the roster as a whole, how do you feel this coming into this year? I guess kind of compared to the past few, it's been a run of contention with some really strong teams. But I mean, do you feel like it's a team that's going to be right back there? And what do you think their plan is?
Yes, I think they'll be right back there. I don't know if they will be right back in the Super Bowl. Obviously, I would hope that, but it's so dang hard in the NFL to get to the Super Bowl, let alone win the Super Bowl. But I think that as far as this division is concerned, as far as maybe the 1 to 3 seed, I really think it's still Bills, Bengals, Chiefs. Jaguars will be better, but I just still see them kind of that 4 seed spot. I don't see them being able to compete with the top 3 dogs in the AFC. But they're going to be there, and they're going to give the Bills and or the Bengals, whoever they get in the first round or 2 of the playoffs, their run for their money as well. And we'll see what happens at the end of the year. As far as getting to that point, they were obviously a little bit quiet over the offseason. I could care less that Juju Smith-Schuster is gone. I don't think that he's that great of a wide receiver anyways. Obviously, he fit the plan. He did what he needed to do for the Chiefs. Obviously, helped win a Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, they didn't lose anything by losing him. They didn't lose anything by losing Orlando Brown, in my opinion, because they went out and got Jawan Taylor really quick right afterwards, right? I think they need to bolster a little bit more of the offense line, probably find a backup tackle there to at least just to keep some type of depth there. I think that wide receiver, we'll see what Kadarius Toney comes out and does, but I would say wide receiver is a need. You talked to Quentin Johnson earlier on Monday's mock draft. So come back and see us on Monday, 8:00 Central Time. All 4 of us plus 4 others will be mock drafting. Dan gets the AFC West. And if Quentin Johnson is there at 31 and Dan doesn't take Quentin Johnson for our beloved Chiefs, I'm going to have some questions for him, because I would love Quentin Johnson to put on the red and yellow. Like, it would be so awesome to have a big-bodied wide receiver like that to go along with all the speed. There's plenty of speed on the Chiefs, but they don't have anybody that can just go up and get the contested catches down the sideline. So somebody like Quentin Johnson would be pretty awesome to have. And then edge rushers, right? You mentioned earlier their free agent signing. I can't say his name, man. You
Charles
said
Omenihu.
Omenihu. I was like, you said it great earlier, but Omenihu and Karlaftis, but just to get another edge rusher or 2 there to really keep the heat on. It could be Frank Clark coming back, but maybe they can get somebody in the draft as well. So those are kind of guys I think that they're targeting, the positions they're going to be targeting. But other than that, I mean, it's a quiet offseason and for good reason, right? They're bringing most of the pieces back, and the pieces they're not bringing back either wanted too much money or, Frank Clark's getting up there in age. I know he's only 29, but the man feels like he's been around the league for 2 decades at this point. So he's definitely got some miles on those tires and getting up there in age, and he's going to have to take a pay cut if he wants to come back. And then one last thing I'll say is DeAndre Hopkins is still a pipe dream for the Chiefs, at least for me as a fan. I think it'd be awesome if somehow he took less money and came over to Kansas City. But, yeah, they're going to be in it. I'm not worried about the division. I don't know that, at one of these years, the Bills are going to figure it out. They've got the talent to figure it out. One of these years, they're going to figure it out. Josh Allen's going to figure it out. I don't know when that's going to happen. Joe Burrow figured it out once. Maybe Josh Allen can figure it out once. But this AFC is freaking stacked. I mean, it's a stacked conference right now.
Yeah, you and Nick might have to fight over DeAndre Hopkins. It's tough it's a tough team to pick against. It feels like the Patriots used to. It's kind of one of those things where it's like every year you're like, the Colts are going to do it this year, and that never seemed outlandish. But
then
by the end of the year, you were like, how inevitable was it? But yeah, it feels very, very Pats Colts to me to this point. And then you've got the Bengals in the mix, the Chargers and the Jags up and coming. Like it is a stacked conference. We're gonna kind of use this as a Q&A for you, Trevor. I'm gonna pick your brain a little bit on some Chiefs specific things. Obviously, Andrew Wiley followed Bieniemy and left town. How do you feel the Eric Bieniemy loss could affect this team as a whole? And you mentioned maybe getting tackle. I think right guard to left tackle. This is one of the best offensive lines in football. Creed is probably the best center, at least in the conversation with Ragnow and the like. Trey Smith.
Got the best hairdo.
Best hairdo. Trey Smith is a fucking mauler. If people don't know about Trey Smith, Chiefs right guard, he's sick. Tooney's awesome. I love Jawan Taylor. How do you feel about, the Lucas Niang, Darian Kennard mix there? And then, and let me know what you think about the Bieniemy loss. How much does that really affect things? How big of a piece was he to the puzzle?
I don't think Eric Bieniemy will be a bad loss for the Chiefs. I think Eric Bieniemy was an issue. I think there were many times that you see on the sidelines him, Kelsey, Mahomes, Reed, Tyreek Hill. They got into it. It was heated. First thing that comes to my mind is when the Bengals-Chiefs game, championship game 2 years ago, right? Chiefs have a 10-point lead going into halftime. Mahomes wants to go for it. I think there's 45 seconds left. Bieniemy, says no, shut her down, put a kneel, and they're yelling at each other. I mean, they're straight yelling at each other going into halftime with a 10-point lead. They come out, lose the game. The game plan against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl was trash. Like, it's what happened, like, how did this team just absolutely wipe the floor with the best offense in the league? The game plan was bad. There was a lot of conversation that came out of that one about how the game plan was put into place and Bieniemy decided to no, I'm going to change it 2 days before. Obviously, a lot of it's rumors, hearsay. There was a little bit of riffraff after last year. He almost didn't come back. They finally just said, whatever, we'll bring you back. I get it. A lot of people, mainstream media is like, this guy deserves a head coaching job. Why is he not a head coach, at this point in time? And for a long time, I kind of agreed with that. And now I'm kind of like, wait a minute. Maybe he's not the player's coach that we all think he is. Maybe he's not the play caller that we all think he is. So him, it's kind of like Kellen Moore getting out of Dallas with McCarthy, right? Just trying to show what he can do elsewhere. I think it's good for Eric Bieniemy. Go somewhere else that's not under Andy Reid and see if you can be successful. And see, was Andy Reid why you're successful? Was it Patrick Mahomes why you were successful? And don't get me wrong, I think any kind of coordinator should do that a little bit more often. But I think there's a reason he's not a head coach in this league right now. And those reasons we're never going to know because we're not in those interviews. We don't know the behind the scenes with these players. But the players are talking, and there's got to be a reason why he's not a head coach. And I think a lot of it has to do with his relationships with his players. And Mahomes, I mean, he's the best quarterback in the league. Like, I'm not saying you have to kiss his feet, but you should probably at least take a little bit of account of what he's looking to do or wanting to do or his ideas around things. And you probably shouldn't just be screaming at him on the sideline on national television heading into halftime. So, no, I wish Eric Bieniemy the best. I know that I am probably a really small percentage of Chiefs fans who feel this way about Eric Bieniemy. I understand that, but that's kind of my take on him, and hopefully he proves me wrong in Washington.
Yeah, let Trevor know if he's wrong in the comments, and if you're here, also like, comment, subscribe. Help us out against that YouTube algorithm. It's an uphill battle. That gave me flashbacks of Denny Green taking a knee in the 98 NFC Championship against the Falcons with the best offense in the league before halftime because we had a lead, but they would have scored if they just went for it. So yeah, and how much of that decision is Bieniemy? How much is Reed? How much of the game plan is one or the other? That'll be interesting to see. Is he Matt Patricia, Josh McDaniels, Bill O'Brien leaving Belichick, or is he a guy who actually has a chance to spread his wings and is going to be a good head coach and a guy who can put a good game plan together? Apart from Andy Reid, who is the be all end all, of course, in Kansas City. Michael or Nick, any Chiefs questions for our Chiefs super fan?
I only have one question, and Trevor, I want to know: have you seen this Twitter beef between Tyreek Hill and Chris Jones? We'll call it beef because I think they're friends. But okay, I'll give you a minute to look it up.
I'm not. Yeah, that's exactly what I just wanted to do.
Yeah. Look over.
Basically, it has to do with Tyreek Hill going on to say that when he plays the Chiefs this next season, that he's going to be their worst nightmare. And Chris Jones, I can't remember exactly what he said, but then it just started like a whole conversation between him and Tyreek, and it eventually it moved on, and then there was that whole interview with Tyreek saying that he's going to retire at the end of his contract, and Chris Jones was like, I don't believe that, none of that's real. And so that kind of reignited it from a couple of days prior. So just as a Chiefs fan, I guess to dumb down the question, make it simpler, how do you feel about Tyreek Hill since he's kind of barking a little bit more now that he's out of Kansas City?
Well, I haven't taken his jersey down yet, so he hasn't crossed me. No, I was a little disappointed when he first left Kansas City and had all the. I get it. I think he was just trying to talk up Tua, and I think when he was trying to talk up Tua, he was kind of talking down Mahomes, and that was a little odd and frustrating because you guys won a championship together. You were one of the best offenses in the league. Tyreek Hill is a freaking beast. I love Tyreek Hill. He was obviously one of my favorite players as a Chief, because how do you not root for this guy? The Chiefs stood behind him when he had all those off the field issues with the ex that was going on. Not sure if you guys remember, but she essentially accused him of beating their child. And then it came out that she had created all these tapes and videos and framed him essentially. And so he, whether or not he did it is still might never be determined, but obviously they determined that she was definitely trying to frame him for it. The Chiefs stood behind him. The Chiefs didn't run. The Chiefs didn't boot him to the curb. They stood behind him. So for him to automatically start talking up to which really turned into talking bad about Mahomes, that was kind of frustrating. But now I don't really blink twice about it. I think now he's just a guy who loves being on Twitter. He loves talking. He loves the spotlight on him, but it's never really been in a terrible light. It's not like Antonio Brown-esque where he wants all the attention, but in very negative ways. I think Tyreek Hill is just a baller who wants to get on Twitter and talk some trash. He's always talking about the races, right? Who can beat me in a race? Nobody's going to beat me in a race. The 4x1s. I mean, he's got everything to back it up. So I think he just likes to get on the Twitter and talk ball and talk some crap. Nothing wrong with that, I don't think.
Yeah, the Tua stuff was funny. It's like Carson Palmer coming out and saying Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in the league. It's like Carson.
He's more consistent.
You're a Bengals guy, but man, you don't have to go that far. Tua throws the prettiest ball I've ever caught. Jesus,
there's a lot of Chiefs fans.
The most accurate ball.
Oh yeah.
Dude, how much did Tua pay him to say that?
That's right. That's right.
No way.
You come here, you say these things, I'll give you a little bit of my money too.
Yeah. All right. Nick or anyone in the comments, anything else Chiefs specific before we get to 2023 division winner, which might not be Chiefs specific?
I guess just for like my Bills' sake, like earlier, Trev, you said like the Bills are gonna catch the Chiefs eventually. Is that just like gut thing, or do you have like reason to believe that's happening? Because I
No,
feel like every single season we fall on our face, we fall short, it snows, we can't handle it. I don't know. It just feels like we have really no hope. But I mean, you said that, and I was like, oh shit, okay.
Maybe,
but you gotta remember, man. Two seasons ago, the Bills had the perfect game against the Patriots, and then lost in a maybe the greatest game ever played in the NFL.
Yeah,
Like that, definitely the greatest ending to a game. The last 2 minutes and overtime was just absolutely unreal. And so what if the Bills win the coin toss?
yeah,
Right?
oh yeah.
What if the Bills win the coin toss?
Yeah,
And then
them in the championship game, yeah.
right, you know what I mean? And so like that's why I say those things. I really truly believe the Bills have it. The biggest thing that the biggest, I guess, positive that was for the Chiefs this last playoff season, they didn't have to beat the Bills and beat the Bengals.
Yeah.
They only had to beat the Bengals. 2 years ago, they had to beat the Bills and then beat the Bengals, and they lost to the Bengals. This year, the Bengals had to beat the Bills and then beat the Chiefs, but couldn't make the second one. And I think that's probably how it's going to continue to go. One of these teams, whoever can get away from the other early in the playoffs, and so they only have to beat one of them, they're going to have a leg up. If the Bills play the Jaguars in the second round and then they play the Bengals or the Chiefs, like, no offense, Trevor Lawrence and company, but of course you want to play the Jaguars and let the other two teams beat up on each other. So that's why I say that. Like, I think that the Bills are great. I love Josh Allen as a quarterback. I'm a fantasy football guy. He's been my fantasy football quarterback for a couple of years in a dynasty league. Like, Steph Diggs is obviously one of the best wide receivers in the game. So they have it going on. And gosh darn it, Bijan Robinson better not fall to Buffalo, because I really think a guy like Bijan would just absolutely catapult this team to a new level. Because
Josh Allen, Bijan, zone read.
All they're waiting on is, Devin Singletary ain't it. Like, I don't care how long they want to keep riding this guy. He's not it. Bijan,
well, we got rid of him. Yeah,
he's not there anymore. But Bijan could be it. I mean, truly, a guy like him, it would be a similar play to what the Chiefs tried to do with Clyde, right? Great offense. Kind of feel like you got an extra pick. Let's just take a great running back. It doesn't really work out for Clyde, but he's a completely different type of running back than Bijan would be. And I think if the Bills took a guy like that in the first round, look out for this offense. But yeah, that's why I'm dead serious when I say I think that they're going to figure it out one of these years. They might have to just get a little bit lucky. And obviously we know with everything that went on with Hamlin this year, luck was definitely not on the Bills side of things. And then they end up with a screwy kind of schedule and screwy standings, and then they got to play the Bengals again, and wasn't on their side. So it has to be perfect. I mean, it has to be perfect for every NFL team.
Yeah, no, I hear you. That makes a lot of sense. I never really thought of it that way, where it's where you say, like, you don't have to play. Because when I was thinking about the schedule, like, we'd have to beat the Bengals, and then if we beat the Bengals, we'd have to beat the Chiefs in Kansas City, and I was like, this is a gauntlet, And then when we barely beat Miami, I was like, we're in trouble here. But yeah, as you said, like, we had the home game taken away from us because of the snow, and then obviously DeMar's thing happened. A lot of people thought that would catapult them to being, like, Super Bowl contenders because they're playing for them. But I actually think it went in the opposite direction, where these guys kind of saw that happen and just messed with their minds.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully he can get back on the field next season or year after that or whatever.
What's going on with Diggs? Like, is he gonna? I mean, it feels like Diggs kind of it's been overshadowed at this point, but I remember watching him at the end of that game. Right. He doesn't seem happy, and maybe it's just because of his competitive spirit. Is he going to be there long term, or could we see like a surprise trade?
He's such an annoying tweeter.
That's another problem, as you said. Like, I love Diggs. I love
tweaker or tweeter?
Tweeter.
Yeah, it's just like he's always in the news, for like the wrong reasons. He's always like saying these like these under the radar things on Twitter that Bills fans have to like dissect. And I know, John, you know about it with the Vikings, and we're like, what does that mean? Like, why is he saying that? He's got like the moon emoji, and we're like, what is he going to bed, or does that mean he wants to leave Buffalo? Like, it's so weird. So yeah, like, does he want to go to the Giants? I heard that he likes Dable. Like, it's so weird. But yeah, I mean, he obviously re-signed last season for like an extension. So I mean, in his contract, he's supposed to stay, but I don't know.
Diggs on the Giants.
He's on a lot of podcasts where he's always saying
With Darren Waller and Daniel Jones.
No, I know. Yeah, I've heard that. So my indication is that he's staying, but if he doesn't, I really wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I would believe that. I'm just like thinking like there's a lot of points to be put up if Diggs goes to if he were to go to the Giants with all those weapons around Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah, he's like he tweets like he's like a 16-year-old girl. Like he'll just tweet like, so ...
I was just gonna bring that one up.
Dude, you have like 18 million followers. What the hell are you talking about? You know, like
he's like in his bed and he like expects us to know what that means. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't. Explain what you mean, Steph.
Dude's just like, before I go to bed, let me get him. Let me get him tonight.
Literally.
Yeah, he's like, let me mess with Bill's Mafia. He loves it.
Yeah.
Like,
and then his brother responds with like the eyes.
As if we haven't gone through enough. Like, can you just be a normal human, please?
Yeah. And then Trayvon hops in with like the eyes or whatever.
The mom likes the pictures. Like, I was going to Dallas. Like, no, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where he deletes his Bills pictures. I don't know.
Trev,
let's have you speak to this take from Lee here. And then we'll jump to our division winner predictions and wrap this bad boy up.
All right. So obviously saying that 11 picks and they need to get a number one wide receiver.
Do you feel like there is a true one in this class that they'd have a shot at late first? I mean, there's a lot of people saying there's not really that guy in this class. You know, there's certainly not a Jamar Chase at the top, but I mean, do you feel like there's a number one that the Chiefs might go get?
I don't believe so. I also don't think that I'm not a big fan of this rookie class, especially the wide receivers. I'm actually, the more I dive into it, the more I like the running backs in this class. Just the depth of the class, not necessarily. I mean, obviously they're top heavy with Robinson.
Yes.
I was starting to think of the Pittsburgh guy for some reason while I said Robinson. But
it sounded wrong to me too, actually, for like
I don't know why. Yeah. And then Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is not Bijan style, but he's up there as well. So I like the top end, but I like the depth of the running backs. I just don't think that this wide receiver class has the depth. And this Chiefs team goes out and gets Sky Moore at 54 last year. I loved that pick. I thought Sky Moore really brings the same similar elements that Mecole does, and I was ready for Hardman to move on and those kind of things. But then they traded for Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney is a number one in the Chiefs system. He's not a true run-of-the-mill number one wide receiver, right? He is no Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Cooper Kupp, you name it. He's not those guys. But for what the Chiefs want to run, he can absolutely be a number one wide receiver, very similar to a Tyreek Hill style of number one wide receiver. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Tyreek by any means, but that's who they're going into the season right now, expecting to be the number one. Now, I mentioned Quentin Johnson earlier, mentioned DeAndre Hopkins earlier. I do believe that if they could get a big-bodied wide receiver, somebody they can throw the jump ball to, it would elevate this offense even more because it brings a whole different aspect to if you're trying to play defense against these guys. Like, yeah, you got the speed on one side, but now you got this big-bodied receiver on the other side. You really got to figure it out. So, and obviously you have the greatest tight end ever in Travis Kelce down the middle. Just kidding. I would still take Tony Gonzalez over him, but I love Travis Kelce. So, but you got the best tight end in the league over the middle too. So it's one of those things that I don't expect Brett Veach to back up the Brinks truck to get somebody. I also don't expect them to, dump a bunch of draft capital in to get somebody. They're going to let this draft come to them. If they like somebody in the mid-20s, I don't, I don't mind them going up and making a move to get there, move a pick like 31 and maybe a 95 or some, something early 4th round to get up to the mid-20s to grab your wide receiver you like, but I just don't know which wide receiver that would be. And I think they'd have to get into the probably low teens to get, if they really want a guy like a Jordan Addison or a Zay Flowers.
Yeah. Yeah, or even a JSN who might bring some of that to the table. But I think you're right. It's Travis Kelce that Mahomes and Travis Kelce connection is insane. It's telepathic at this point. Their timing's perfect. And yeah, you're right. I mean, Kadarius Toney's a guy for whom you can really just manufacture touches. You can work him horizontally. You can get him over the middle where he can create after the catch on the famous Tyreek Hill crosser that's done so much damage. And yeah, he could be kind of like fill that role a little bit that they were missing. And then MVS will be back. Sky Moore can kind of do it all. I think they feel okay with where the weapons are at if all else fails. And yeah, Lee thinks, with some of those late picks, you can consolidate, get into the late teens. But I think they are in a position to do something like that if they identify a guy they really like, whether that's a cornerback or an edge rusher. Even if it's not a wide receiver, like I think they could say, oh, this guy's going to be great. Let's just go get him, because their roster's
right. Go get the right tackle.
Go get their right tackle if a guy like Broderick Jones falls, or if what the hell is his name? Tennessee. Somebody help me out.
Right.
Tennessee tackle. Darnell Wright. If he falls for calling analysts dick eaters in their DMs, did you guys see that?
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. If he falls down boards, go get that guy. That'd be awesome. But it's I think they're in a position where they really could do something like that and feel fine about it, like the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick, where it's like, hey, roster's in a good spot. Let's see if we can get the best player available, and maybe even trade up.
Well, I would say this: Brett Veach does not ignore his phone calls on draft night, and it is in Kansas City this year, so we are lucky to host the draft. I'll be lucky enough. I'm pulling my 7-year-old out of school on Friday, and we're going to go down there.
That's awesome.
We won't go there during like the actual live draft, but there's so much going on around it that I'm going to go down there and kind of show him, experience the draft, just see how it is. I think it's going to be pretty awesome. But I say all that because it is in Kansas City. It is in the same place that they celebrated their Super Bowl victory, not once, but twice. So why not? Why not make a big splash? Why not move up and go get somebody, make a big splash in front of your hometown fans? Just mess with the NFL one more time.
Yeah. Kev likes the Darnell Wright energy.
Did he send you a DM too?
Okay, we've got the question of the night ticking on the bottom. You know what? I'll start it, and we'll end on Trevor. We'll go me, Nick, Michael, Trevor. Boom, 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 boom. I'm going to go Chargers. I think the stars align. The Chiefs have the more difficult schedule, like we mentioned. And again, if this team is, if they have half as many injuries, hell, if they have the same amount of injuries and they're not to 6 of their 8 best players, This
Yeah.
team is going to be a problem. And I think I touched on it earlier. The Chiefs, they've been here. I don't think it's a Super Bowl hangover. But I think it's a team that is just kind of just ready to get to the playoffs. They know they're going to be there at the end. But I think for the first time in a long time, the AFC will not go through Arrowhead. I like, maybe this is the year the Bills snatch the 1 seed. Maybe it's the year the Bengals snatch the 1 seed. I won't go so far as to say the Chargers do. I think they'll get knocked around a little bit. And I certainly think both teams win double-digit football games this year. But they're both getting 2 free wins against the Raiders. And I just think they split. Chargers Chiefs split, and the Chargers have a few more gimmies on the schedule, which is most of my feeling there. And I think the playing field outside of that is going to be a lot more level if guys like Slater, J.C. Jackson, Mike and Keenan are healthier. Maybe they're the team that goes and gets Jahmyr Gibbs in the draft, with Eckler, pissing and moaning a little bit. Maybe they get a guy like Hyatt who can really stretch the field, and this offense really rounds out. Maybe they get a Kalijah Cansey, like Nick mentioned. Maybe they get a Adebaware,
No.
who is one of the toolsiest guys I've ever seen in my life. 4.49 at 6'2", 6'2 and a half, 280. So yeah, that's my spiel. I like the Chargers this year. It's their year to lose in the second round. Nick, who you got?
Are you kidding me? You're gonna say all that, but the Chargers win the division. They're gonna lose in the second round.
Well, I mean, probably.
Listen,
right?
Because they're going to face the Bills or the Bengals.
Yeah, there you go, Nick. It's all for you.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with a lot of the things you're saying. I think that, as you said, like if 6 of the 8 guys that get hurt just aren't like their star tackle or their star safety or corner or receivers, like they can still get hurt. They can still catch the Charger injury bug. Somebody I watched called them the Jets of the West, and I'm like, that's just no, because the Jets aren't nearly as good as them. But just like this in like the sense of like they get unlucky all the time. But I do think the Chargers are going to win like 11, 12 games. But the problem is, I think the Chiefs are going to win 13. So, while the Chargers are a really good team and they're going to be a lot better than they were last year and probably pose bigger threat. And if they have the Jags, like they will take care of them this time. They won't let that happen. But I just can't go against Kansas City just because of what I just saw and because of what I've seen. And while I want that to happen so badly, where it doesn't run through Arrowhead, I need to see it happen before I can pick that it would happen.
Yeah, it takes guts.
Yeah, it does.
It takes guts.
Michael, who you got?
I mean, I hate to like defy the consensus, but like it's kind of hard to like. It's really hard to like see this Kansas City team and watch Patrick Mahomes and see the coach that Andy Reid is. And like I basically what Nick said. Like I think the Chargers are probably going to win. I would say 10 or 11, maybe more. But I think the Chiefs. I do think honestly that the Chiefs will have the 1 seed next year. Like I just. It's hard for me to picture any other team leading that division when you have Patrick Mahomes. If you have Patrick Mahomes, I am willing to bet that you're going to win your division. That's just the player that he is.
My friends, you have sight but no vision.
You've also disappointed John so bad tonight. I'm so sorry. We could have done a 3-on-1 tonight, but we didn't.
Yeah.
All right. Before I give my easy pick,
right?
Real quick, and John, I'm looking at you mostly because you took the Chargers. Both teams, we'll say they both beat the Bengals, or not the Bengals, the Broncos and the Raiders, whatever, because those teams are shit. At Green Bay, who would you rather have, Chiefs or Chargers?
At Green Bay?
Yeah. Chiefs or Chargers, or both. Maybe you like both.
What
they
time
just
of
like
year
both.
is it? What time of year is it?
Well, they don't know those things yet. I'm just asking.
Yeah, all right, that's a toss-up then. That's
It
a
doesn't
toss-up.
matter in
Late-
Lambeau anymore.
It's Jordan Love, so probably
All
both.
right, it doesn't matter
I
in
would say
Lambeau.
both.
Because it doesn't matter anymore.
I would say both.
Yeah.
Okay, Bills at home. Who would you rather be, the Chiefs or? Did you guys see that? Sorry, my lights just flickered.
Yeah, I did.
The Chiefs
we
or the Chargers at home against the Bills.
SoFi's rocking.
All right. Okay.
No, it's not.
SoFi's
though.
gonna be rocking with Bills fans. Okay.
Oh, they gotta go.
All right. So you want to get
No, we
The
always
Niners
do
are there.
the
It's
Niners.
not.
No.
Sure.
okay? Dolphins, Chiefs or Chargers at home.
At home, they're
Doesn't
both
matter.
wiping the floor with them.
Yep. Chicago, they're both winning. Detroit, probably both winning. At Minnesota, at your Minnesota Vikings, Chiefs or Chargers, who do you think beats them?
Chargers are going to Charger there. That's all
Yeah,
Vikes. I actually picked the Vikes to beat the Chiefs too this
You
year.
think that, okay, so you say Vikings in that at New England. These are all games that they have the exact same schedule. The only
Yeah.
difference in their schedule this year is that I'm actually learning as we go, and I'm learning this on the fly, is the Chiefs host the Bengals while the Chargers host the Ravens. Who knows what's going on with Lamar Jackson? And then the Chiefs play the Jaguars while the Chargers play the Titans. That's it.
Isn't there? There's a
and then
third
the Eagles and Cowboys. Sorry, and then the Eagles and
Yeah.
Cowboys. So there's three
Kellen
games
Moore
that's
revenge game.
different. 3 games that's different, and I don't really think those 3 games are. I mean, the Eagles beating the Chiefs is definitely real, but the Chiefs have all those games at home. Bills, Bengals, Eagles, all those games that I mentioned earlier, they're all at home as well. So I don't know. I'm not actually worried about this schedule nearly as much as I was earlier. And for the Chargers to have to play the exact same schedule, give me the Chiefs. They win this division by 3 games after going 13-4, probably. The Chargers go, what did I say, 2 or 3 games? 11 and 3 games, 10-6, 10-7.
No, that would be 11-6. Or
11-6.
10-7.
I don't know, whatever it is. 2 to 3 games. Chiefs win this division. They sweep the series. They probably go 6-0 in the division once again. The Chargers are going to be a good football team. They cannot win when it matters. They have never shown that. I don't believe it's going to happen this year. They have done nothing this offseason to improve their injury-riddled team. That's what we talked about the whole show, is how they're injury-riddled. And they've done nothing to improve that, and they're probably going to lose Austin Eckler. Give me the Chiefs by 3 games.
All I heard was Eagles revenge game, Kellen Moore revenge game.
Yeah.
Bengals revenge game, Bills revenge game. Chiefs got a lot of revenge games this year.
Yeah. Oh man! All right.
I'm just surprised that all of those games are at home. Like that's silly.
That's interesting. Yeah,
Very interesting.
yeah. We'll have to see
Are
what
they on
time
the
of year.
road this year?
What's
What's
that?
that?
Are they on the road this year, or the NFL just wanted to see all the games?
Yeah,
in
you know, they
Yeah.
gotta go to the
It's
Jets and
fun
the
in there. Right? Let's
Patriots.
have them all there.
All
And the
right. Well, this
Packers,
was a
that's
fun
it.
one. Any closing thoughts, gentlemen?
I
here.
heard.
I forgot to bring this up. We'll close on a little bit of this
Oh,
action.
gosh.
Oh, sure, yeah. I was surprised we never.
Okay.
And so we saw the Lamar OBJ FaceTime. We've been
Mhm.
talking about the loaded AFC. Is it good? Is it going to stay as loaded with Baltimore as an actual contender? If Lamar goes back, they got OBJ. Maybe 2 of their 5 running backs stay off the IR. You know, is that another team that's going to be in the mix? I mean, how there might be 10 like reasonable playoff projectable teams. You know, is that another team that's sneaky this year? Do you feel like, or do you feel like Lamar's gone? Are they just home? Are they just buddies? And he's like, you know, way to rob him for potentially 18 million incentives. Fuck the Ravens, dude. Maybe they're just like on FaceTime, like, ah,
There's no way.
Get
no.
your bag, man.
get your bag.
Have fun there. I didn't.
The last time, I'll say this. Last time I saw a quarterback and a receiver on FaceTime. It was Derek Carr and Devontae Adams. See how that turned out. So
Yeah.
I mean, they're like best friends. They probably talk to each other like every week.
Yeah, Fresno.
Yeah, I'm sure Lamar and Odell are great friends too.
Yeah, they might be.
I don't know.
No, I don't think the Ravens are a contender. I'll
I
answer the
don't think
question
so
very
either.
easily. No. Whatever. Like, he also had Hollywood Brown, and he didn't do shit with him.
True.
Like, he's a really good wide receiver. And OBJ, I assume, will be fine, but I mean, he's going to be like a number 3 type receiver at this point. Think about Julio Jones. I mean, it's kind of a similar situation. Julio Jones goes to Tennessee and becomes nothing because he's old. Yeah. He's dealt with injuries, and it just the NFL tears these guys up, and that's not. I don't know. I think OBJ might have a couple good games in him, but I don't expect to see a great season out of him, especially in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson never throws to his wide receivers, so unless he's going to turn to be a tight end, it does nothing for me to make the Ravens a contender.
Yeah, his heat map's a little Jimmy G-esque. Yeah, he's over the middle for sure. I think this was in reference to me taking the Chargers.
That's right.
I said it with like one peck. I don't know. You know, I gotta mix it up a little bit, right? Well, this was fun, guys. Thank you so much, Trevor, for joining us. Awesome Chiefs insight. You will catch us next week, multiple times next week. We've got it is going to be the 17th, Monday the 17th. We've got our mock draft Monday night on the Bite Size Sports Network. It will be 8 of us, so we're picking a division each, and that's going to be a really fun time. We're going to go through the whole first round. One of us is going to be stuck with just 3 teams because of the Tom Brady, Sean Payton collusion over in Miami. And but that's going to be a really fun one. And then Tuesday, we're going to follow it up with the NFC East and NFC West. And then that will lead us right up to draft night, the Thursday right after that. So we'll go through those divisions as quick as we can. Obviously, we'll have the big mock draft, and then we'll try to talk as much draft as we can that week. And just because we'll be so close to it. And then the following Tuesday, we've got a lot to talk about then. So stick with us, subscribe, hit the bell, turn notifications on, and you will see us next week. Thanks, guys.
Have a great one, boys.